Hi, beautiful people. Today we are going to answer this question. Would you rather have a job where you earn $3,000 every day, or would you rather have a job where your salary tripled each day? Like the first day you made $1, the next day you made $3, the next day you made $9, and so on. To help us explore these two kinds of jobs, let's talk about linear functions, which we studied before, and exponential functions that are new to us. First, let's imagine that there are two kinds of math tests. The first test is pretty normal. Each question is worth 2 points, so every correct answer will add 2 to your total each time. This is a linear function. Each time you get a question right, you add 2 points. That's not too hard to imagine, right? This is the kind of test that most of us take in schools. For example, there might be 20 questions on a test worth 100 points, so each question is then worth 5 points, something like that. We're used to seeing this, and most tests are graded in a linear way. But imagine if there were a different kind of math test, one that's designed almost like a video game. Each time you answer correctly, instead of getting a set point added each time, when you answer it correctly, you level up, and you're now given a harder question. At first, that doesn't sound too great, right? Math is pretty hard already. Do we really want more and more and more difficult questions? But there is some good news. Your first correct answer is only 2 points, just like the linear situation. But with this new leveled up question, your next correct answer won't only be worth 2 points. It would be worth 4 points. If you leveled up on that question, then your next points would be valued at 8. In other words, because your questions get harder each time, the points for each question at a new level will double the last one. So let's take a look. Let's make a standard table together. So these are our number of correct answers. That's our first column. Our second column is going to record the score that we would earn. This one reflects a rate of change of 2. So this one's going to talk about our linear situation. Y equals 2x. Okay. If you had a test where each question was worth 5 points, then we would write this as y equals 5x. This is saying our x is equal to how many correct answers, or the number of correct answers we have. Our score, because each answer is worth 2 points, will be 2 times the amount of correct answers we have. So for example, if we had 0 correct answers, how many points would we get? We all know, you get nothing right on a test, you get a 0. And that makes sense again because y equals 2 times 0. 2 times 0 is 0. If we got one question right, we would get 2 points as our total score because 2 times 1, or 2 points times 1 correct answer is 2. If we got 2 points correct, we'd have 2 points times 2 correct questions, we'd have 4 points on our test. If we got 3 correct answers, we'd have 2 points times 3 correct answers for a total of 6 points. If we had 4 correct answers, 4 times 2 would be 8 total points. 5 times 2, or 5 correct answers times 2 total points, would be a final score of 10 if, heaven forbid, we only got 5 answers right. And you can kind of notice a pattern over here. Each of these is adding plus 2 to get to the next value, right? 0 plus 2 is 2. 2 plus 2 is 4. 4 plus 2 is 6. 6 plus 2 is 8. 8 plus 2 is 10. And we talked about this earlier in the semester when we discussed how linear functions are always either adding the same amount each time, that's our rate of change, or subtracting the same amount each time if we had, for example, a negative slope. And we could continue to follow this pattern out to make predictions about the future. Well, I know if I got 5 questions right, I'd get 10 points. What would happen to me if I got 7 questions right? Now we could add 2, and we'd know that you got 12 points. If you got 6 right, we'd add 2 more, and we'd know you have 14. And of course, the easiest way, you can continue to count by 2s. But if you wanted to know what would happen if you got 30 questions right, you'd have to add 2s a lot, right? So instead of adding those 2s over and over, we'll use multiplication, which is, of course, repeated addition. And we'll say, if I'm getting 2 points for every correct question, and I got 30 questions correct, 2 times 30 is 60. So clearly, if I've got only 30 questions right on the test, I need to go back, reapply myself, and make sure that I can get that 60 to at least passing, right? That's one of the great things about algebra. If my goal was passing, I could use algebra. Knowing I needed a 70, I could use algebra to figure out how many questions I would need to get right. And of course, we've done this before. This is solving a one-step equation. You've been doing that since 6th grade. Now let's talk about a new situation we're encountering that we saw yesterday with exponential functions. I don't want us to write down the function yet because I kind of want us to think about it a little bit before we write it down. But going back to both the zombie situation and this test situation, where zombies were doubling, money was doubling for Biff, and in this case, your score is doubling each time. So at the first level, before you've even tried one question, you get a point just for trying. Because, you know, Miss Wise is awesome. She's like, wow, you signed on to the math gaming test. You're so brave to try new things. Here's a point. Okay? Now, you get one question right. We're going to multiply by 2 each time because our points will double each time. 1 times 2 is 2. Now I went up to the next level. This is level 2. And when I get this question right, I'm going to multiply this by 2. And I'm going to have 4. Now you'll notice that with the exception of 0, these look very similar, don't they? When I've got one correct answer, I got 2 points in a linear function. When it was 1 correct, I got 2 points in an exponential function. They don't seem that different. When I had 2 correct answers with a linear test, where I got added 2 points each time, I made 4 points. With exponentials, I'm still making 4 points. Let's see, though, if the same pattern of equivalency exists when we get 3 questions right. So if I get 3 questions right with a linear test, 2 points each time, my points are only 6. But what is 4 times 2? That's right. I would have 8 points for getting that 3rd question right, not just 2 more added. Okay? If I got 4 questions right with linear, they're going to just add 2 more points, and I have a total of 8. But in this exponential test, my questions get harder each time, so I'm not going to just get 2 more points. I'm not even just going to get 8 more points. Because I've leveled up the difficulty of my question, I'm going to get 8 times 2 points. So when I get 4 questions right, I'm going to have 16 points. Okay. You'll notice this pattern from the zombie examples from yesterday and the Back to the Future examples, right? 1 times 2 is 2, 2 times 2 is 4, 4 times 2 is 8, 8 times 2 is 16, and they're going to double each time, right? 16 times 2 is 32. If we wanted to know about getting 6 questions right, we'd again multiply that 32 by 2, and we would get a 64 in total points. If we multiply by 2 again, we level up, we get that 7th question right, and now 64 times 2, or 64 doubled, 64 plus 64, 128. Wow. And here you see the real and shocking difference between linear functions and exponential functions. They both can grow or decay. My sad little marker's dead. He tried his best. They both can grow or decay, but they don't grow and decay at the same rates. As I said yesterday, exponential functions grow very rapidly. And even some linear things can grow rapidly. What if I told you you got 50 points for every correct answer? Maybe it's a critical thinking question. 50 points is a very steep slope for rate of change, but it still wouldn't beat an exponential growth of points. As we saw here, if you got 7 questions, you'd only have a 14. My goodness, if you made 30 questions correct in this linear test, adding 2 points each time, you would still be failing. But with the exponential question, sure, the questions got harder. They got harder each time, but you only had to get 7 questions right as opposed to 35 questions right in order to pass. Not only did you pass, you made 128. You made an above a perfect score. So if you did poorly on other tests in the past, now you've got 28 bonus points. That's how fast exponential functions grow and compared to linear functions. So hopefully that gives you something to think about. I've also put a graph down here from Desmos to show you kind of what we were talking about. At first, they're very close together. They have some of the same points. When x is 1, they're at the same point. When x is 2, they're at the same point. But we start to see some real gaps at 3 and 4. The linear equation has points visible on this function, this graph, all the way up to day 11, whereas we can't see where the exponential function even is on day 5 because it shot up so quickly, it's off of our graph. To think about what would happen with the exponential on day 30, we can take a look at this red line, orange. We can see that the blue exponential function hits this 30 very, very quickly, whereas this linear equation takes quite a lot longer to reach those 30 points. The functions for exponential functions, they don't look like y equals 2x, but they do look very similar. We're multiplying by 2 each time. So 2 is still part of our problem set. We're multiplying by 2. So instead of adding 2 for a rate of change, we're multiplying by 2 each time. And we would write this as y equals not 2x, but 2 exponent x. I welcome you to try that and to see what it would be if you got 30 questions right on the exponential test. That will also give you some sense of your jobs. As you think about, would you rather have a job where you earn $3,000 a day or a job where your salary tripled, even though on the first day you made $1? Try to think about what would you be making on day 7 with both of these jobs? What would you be making on day 30 with both of these jobs? And then tell us what you decide and why you decide it down in the comments. It was great talking to you guys today. See you tomorrow.